This is the Wandering Mike.
Welcome everyone to the Wandering Mike. Today I'm here with Lynn. Hey Lynn, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. Had a quiet day so far.
I'm good.
Um, yeah, it's been a pleasantly warm day as well. Like in the morning, it was freezing.
It was compared to yesterday too. Yesterday was
Yeah,
pouring rain.
and yeah, now it's heaven's gates have opened up. Um, so yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation
Yeah,
now.
so am I.
And to get us started, if you just want to introduce yourself to the people, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your life, your journey, and how many of few words that you want.
Okay. Well, my name is Lynn Jodoin. I'm from Bonnyville, Alberta, Canada, and I made my way to New Zealand in September. I was working as a preschool teacher for 5 years before, and just decided that I got my 5-year thank you backpack from the school district, and it kinda woke me up as, like, I realized that I hadn't noticed that it had been 5 years that I'd been working at the job until I
Right.
got this backpack, so I was like, "Oh, okay. This isn't exactly what I wanna be doing with all of my time."
Mm,
And I had a friend that had moved to New Zealand about
mm.
7 years ago that
Oh,
I graduated with. She met her Kiwi in Canada, and then they moved to New Zealand, and then since then, she's been trying to convince me to
right,
come stay with them and visit, and yeah, last year I just said, "Okay," and here I am.
right. So that was kind of the well, the strongest motivation for you to come to visit your friends. That's
Yeah.
kind of what got you to like New Zealand of all
Yes.
places.
Yeah, that's what gave me the courage to actually come here and stay because I knew somebody. I'm not sure if I would have had the courage to do it if I didn't know someone that was established here that, had
Right.
roots already, but I'm very thankful for her. She's done so much for me. Her and her partner have just been incredible to me since I've been here, so really
Nice.
appreciate them, man.
They are staying on the South Island as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they live in Oamaru.
Right. Oh, isn't that like the super beautiful city of Maru? Like
Uh,
what looks like kind of like a European.
mm, no, Oamaru is more of a small coastal town.
Yeah.
It's, like, right next to the ocean. Not sure
We
if
might be
it's
thinking about the same thing. I'm not
you think
sure.
so?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe, maybe not. I rarely know what I'm talking
It's the same here. It's like
about. Yeah, let's actually take it back a little bit. Because a lot of the things you just said sound very interesting to me. So I want to go into more detail there.
sounds good.
So obviously a preschool teacher, um, very important role. I don't have a lot of friends that actually do the important work. So why? What motivated you to do that?
Oh, boy. Um, well, when I was 19 or 18, just freshly graduated high school, I went to university to be a high school teacher
Right.
because I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I just kind of, my mom was a teacher, so I decided, oh, whatever, I'll
Right.
just do that too. And then I dropped out after a semester because it just was not for me. And I started working part time in a preschool just as an assistant. And I started working with some of the special needs children in the
Mm,
classroom. So I was doing one on one with a lot of them. And I mean, anybody that works with special kids like that, no, they, you form such an attachment to them
mm,
and you form a, a bond really. And it really changed. There was one specific child that I worked with and he and I he really did change the trajectory of
mm,
where my life was headed. And after working with him, I decided that I really, really did want to work with younger kids. And I
right.
discovered that I had a talent and a passion for working with children. So I went to school uh, and I graduated with my early learning early childhood, early learning course, whatever.
Mm.
And then I started working at uh, the school that I graduated from. So
Mm,
my small town
right.
school. Um, but yeah, I just realized that a lot of people that work in education, um, you need a specific person to work with kids to make the difference that's needed
Mm.
with the children. And yeah, just wanting to make some kind of a difference for at least one kid would have been enough for me. And so I felt very lucky to be able to go to school to learn about it and then, work in that field.
Yeah, I feel like that's, and in my romanticizing ideal mind, that's always the case, but it sadly probably isn't. But that's a very important thing to really want to like make a difference
Yeah.
in the lives of children. And um, not only that, but I feel like also having not really an education background, but having worked as well, the official job title was trainer, which basically means the people that come into our company, I was basically welcoming them into the company. I was showing them the software we use,
Okay.
training them how to use it, and also training them, since it was a customer service job,
Mhm.
customer service skills. So in that kind of way, teaching them skills.
Yeah.
But obviously, these were all in quotation, adult people.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them were like 18 in their 20s, but per definition, they were all
Yeah.
all adults.
Yeah.
Um,
I've learned that the way that I've dealt with like since kind of learning to navigate children, it's changed the way that I deal with anybody in general. Like
right.
it really has. So, I mean, if you're teaching someone, you're teaching someone, doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. Um, but I could just imagine that for kids, um, the what I found out is that even if you have that right mindset, patience really is a skill that you need to learn.
Yes.
Because you can have like the best motivation, you might not even realize. And I'm talking about myself personally here. I didn't even realize how often I brushed something off, how often I didn't take the time to really consider their point of view, and just like so I really know how hard it is
Yes.
to learn that skill of patience. So I feel like maybe especially with children, that's a big part of it too, right?
It is probably the biggest part of it, honestly. One thing I really appreciated about my education is that they were very, very adamant about the fact that children are people, and just because they are little does not make them and their feelings any less important than your own. And so it's very hard for adults to recognize that, you're having a conversation with a child and their reaction to something just because it wouldn't be what your reaction is doesn't make it any less valid.
Yeah.
And you have to get off your high horse when dealing with children because, so and so stepped on his Lego house, and
Yeah.
them that is such a big deal in the moment. And you kind of have to, bring yourself down to their point of view and realize like, okay, just because I don't think it's that big of a deal does not mean that they're not devastated in this
Yeah.
moment. And so, yeah, it's just removing yourself from your own kind of perception of things and forcing you to realize that in order to connect with the kids, you have to relate to them in some way.
And what I also found, and I don't know if you share this experience, but I feel like because with every job, basically that people do, you like get better at it, you learn, And at a certain point, you kind of feel like you know it all. You're getting into a kind of an autopilot kind of
Yeah.
thing. But especially for training people and teaching people, um, yeah, that's not really how it works because you
Yeah.
always need to be there 100%. You
Yeah.
always need to be
You need to
focused and
adapt all the time.
really because it at the end obviously is about you in a way, but it's also not because you always need to cater it to your audience.
Yep.
Otherwise, you can just be talking for 3 hours and no one took anything away from it.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I totally know what you mean by that. It is. It's very because no kid is the same. Everybody learns in a different way. So you
Yeah,
constantly have to be adapting to the people around you. And, especially in preschool, they're 4 years old. And
right.
when they first start is when it's, the whole patience thing, that's when it really has to come into play because they're tiny, they're little, they're in a brand new building without mom and dad,
Mm,
with a bunch of strangers that they don't know. That's a terrifying situation for a 4-year-old, right? So it's you're always having to maneuver around different emotions for different reasons, so it's just a constant, there is no autopilot when it comes to
yeah.
dealing with kids, that's for sure.
Um, just to maybe clarify that as well, because I think it works a little bit different in Germany, but preschool is that the very first place where they are ever taken away from their parents?
No, there are daycares and day homes that kids
Mm,
can go to, but preschool would be considered like a stepping stone to kindergarten. So a
right.
daycare is mostly just, it's like a babysitting kinda
Mm,
deal for parents who work. Whereas preschool is a bit more purposeful. It has like a quote unquote curriculum that
right.
they somewhat have to follow just to kind of get them ready for kindergarten. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of daycares and day homes that kids go to while mom and dad go to work. Yeah.
So, people that have listened to the podcast might have heard me say that a couple of times, but I'm generally speaking, and I also know it's always hard to generalize, but overall, I'm not the biggest fan of the education system.
Oh, don't get me started on the education system.
So, yeah, basically, the question I wanted to ask is, um, and I feel like, yeah, it does start very early. So, from your perspective, what do you think is most important for kids to grow up in a way that is beneficial to them, to their development? What do you think?
Oh, I love that question. I I am a very firm believer that um, kids learn at their own pace and kids learn about the things that they're interested in. And so
Yes.
I think that it's important for the adults to adapt to them rather than them adapting to adults. I despise the fact that, kids as young as 6 years old are being told that they need to sit at a
Mm,
desk all day long. I think that that's completely unrealistic and it sets standards that a lot of kids cannot they can't reach because
yeah.
they physically some kids physically cannot sit still in a desk all day and they're punished for it because, they're seen as the loud ones, the rambunctious ones and
ex-
you know, I think that I think that the education system needs to be a lot more flexible in the way that they teach um children because of the fact that it is not no like I said before, no kid learns the same way. Everybody's different. Everybody learns in a different way, and I think that the education system is designed in a very specific way, like a more specific than anything else that I can think of genuinely because
Yeah.
you're meant to memorize. If you're not good at memorizing, then you're kind of shit out of luck in school. Um, so yeah, I think that it's unfair. I think the education system is quite unfair in in the way that their expectations of kids in general.
Yeah. Um, I feel like the thing you mentioned, and this doesn't need to be like a whole criticism of the
Yeah.
education system. I always like to focus like on the positive things
Yes,
more and see how
yes.
we can do a better job at it. But um, also acknowledging maybe it is hard to adapt to the children in a way of
It's extremely
if
hard.
if you do have, like you said, this very specific thing, it is quote unquote easy
Yeah.
for everyone um administrative or like just teaching it. It is easier because you have a framework and you're trying to put press the children into that framework
Yeah.
rather than creating each and every time
Yes.
a new framework for
It
someone.
is. It's kinda like a it's difficult to say which direction to go, honestly, because of like you said,
Yeah.
what I'm suggesting is impossible. There's not enough teachers with enough time on their hands to create a specific plan for
Mm.
every child, and I the teachers that I grew up with and that I ended up working with for 5 years, those were all my old teachers.
Right.
I would not be who I am without my teachers. I appreciate every single one of them, and so it's like you said, it's not all bad. I grew up with such a good, group of adults guiding us through
Mm.
school, so there's good and evil in every situation, and I think that I definitely got the good end of the stick when it came to, like, the teachers in my life, so it's give and take, but yeah.
I guess one of the and I guess I am criticizing again, but um, one of the things that I always think about is just that the education system might work in a really good way if you're someone that, for example, wants to go into the academic field.
Yes, absolutely.
If you're maybe even someone that wants that knows for a fact they want to be a doctor, there's because or a lawyer, things like that, where there is just this road map
Mhm.
where you know if you want to be a doctor, you just need to learn these things about
That kinda
medicine.
direction is
You,
definitely needed for
you just know that you have to
yeah,
have all these fields.
yeah.
But if we're talking about more creative
Mhm.
jobs, or if we're talking about, like you said, children that are inclined to be more creative and maybe
Yeah,
they just want to sit around all day and draw and become the next Michelangelo.
yeah,
School is not for them.
yeah, I
And
know.
I feel like that's a problem that we kind of assume that every child. Well, I don't know if we assume that they want to, or if we would be worse, just think that they should
Mm,
go into a path that is more academic,
mhm.
because the beautiful thing is that we are all different.
Yeah.
And if we would all be working in academics, no one would, like nothing would work
Yeah,
anymore because there
exactly.
would be no people collecting our trash. There would be
Yeah,
no people baking our bread. And
yeah,
so obviously not everyone that grows up is going to be working in academics. So
mhm.
I feel like schools, I know it's hard, but should find a way to cater to that, knowing that not everyone is going to end up
I agree, I
in the path.
completely agree. I think that that also ties into the funding that schools get and, teacher salaries, but that's a whole other beast to tackle.
Well, I guess the point you're making is a legit point, though, because I feel like everyone you ask, is the job of a teacher important? 99, if not hopefully 100%, would say yes.
Yeah,
And it's obviously not shown by the salary that you get for a job like that, which
unfortunately.
um, I can imagine discourages a lot of people from doing it.
Yes.
And well, you're here now, so eventually I'm gonna ask you why you didn't, want to work there anymore. So, but I mean, that's a legit problem
It
is,
is.
we are kind of agreeing that it's an important, if not the most important job, also depending on the framework it's done by, it
Yeah,
can be the most important, thing in a child's upbringing.
absolutely.
Um, so yeah, this should be rewarded financially.
Right? You would think so. You would really think so. I'm still trying to wrap my head around around that whole situation, but yeah, the like I still talk to most of my teachers that I've grown up with. Um, my mom was my teacher, which
Oh, was
was
she actually?
yes, that was such a special
Mm,
experience for me. My mom is my absolute best friend in the whole entire world. I worked with her at the school that I was at for 5 years, so
mm,
we've been attached at the hip for a long time now.
right.
Um, so yeah, having somebody like my mom, who was the most incredible teacher, anybody at the school would have told you that my mom was their favorite teacher. That is like what she was meant to do with her life. She was such a gifted teacher, and I saw the effect that she had on my friends and her students
Right.
real time. So yeah, it's special to see how much a teacher can, influence and guide all the kids that they look after.
And I guess that's the good thing and the sad thing is that people like that, that are really just born to do it, and you can tell they do it because they love it.
Yes.
So, they will do it. They will probably do it for free.
Yep.
Um, so that's great, but that's also sad because that's why, the system still works, and that's
Yep.
why, um, I assume the government. I don't know if, education is privatized.
Yeah.
No,
No,
it's
it's the
public.
government. Yeah.
So
Well, there's public and private schools, but
right.
mostly public schools in Canada.
So that's why they get away with the budget that they have right now because there is still people, and I mean, generally speaking, you can probably say that about any job. There's always
Yes.
people just willing to do something because they ultimately love it
Yeah.
and don't care about how much they get paid, which does not mean at all that they shouldn't get
Exactly.
paid that amount.
Exactly. The amount of work that my mom did outside of hours is, I mean, she comes home with homework.
Right.
There's, not a lot of other jobs besides lawyers and, the people that take
Yeah.
their work home with them. That's a very heavy thing a lot of the time. So, yeah, she's she's one of a kind woman for sure.
Um, so yeah, I guess since I already teased the question, um, and I don't want to beat down more on the education system that we already did. Um, obviously, after 5 years, you already said you needed a change of some sort. So,
Yes.
what triggered that want for change?
I was I was working in a very, very small room with 22 4-year-olds. So it was very confined space. This was my last year um as a preschool teacher. My first year as being the head preschool teacher was the year that COVID hit,
Mm.
and I had 27 kids in a
Oh
very
wow.
small room. It was probably the most overwhelming year that I've ever been through. Um, and so that right away there was a lot of challenges that were presented. And yeah, my last year, it's I mean, just to put it simply, it is absolutely exhausting.
Yeah.
It is very, very draining. Um, I would go to work, you have 22 toddlers just pouring their emotions on you all day long, and you have to somewhat shut off your own, you know,
Yeah.
internal struggles with whatever you're dealing with outside of work is not front and center right now. Like, you need to be taking care of these babies.
Yeah.
And I just found after 5 years that it's very, very emotionally exhausting, and it had gotten me thinking about whether or not I wanted kids in the first place. I loved kids so much,
Mm,
but dealing with kids all day, I couldn't imagine myself coming home to more
right.
kids. So it really kinda twisted the where I was headed in life, and I was very, very confused. I was very tired. I was very emotional all the time, and I just decided that for my well-being for now, it's definitely not something that I wanted to continue, because like you said before, if you are working with kids, you need to want to work with kids,
Yeah.
and for me, it was getting to a point where I just wasn't really wanting to do it anymore. And usually when teachers get that way, they start to get mean and they start to get
Mm.
grumpy and they start to get,
And it's not beneficial to the children as
to
well.
anybody involved. So I didn't want to turn into, the bitter.
Cruella de Vil.
Yes, exactly. So I decided to remove myself before it would get to that point. I can definitely see myself going back at some point,
Right.
but for now, it's just not for me for now.
So, um, basically, yeah, what you kind of hinted at is, um, well, no, I'm not going to criticize anything, but obviously,
There's a lot to say about the education system.
obviously, it might not be the best idea to overwhelm, especially our new teachers that are so motivated
Yes.
with like that big of an amount because and again never have worked with children. I can imagine it needs even more focus than with adults,
Ye
but at some point, because the company I was working at, as with most companies, not everything goes smoothly.
Yeah.
um, so I think the ratio that they originally had per trainer was like 20 people. And because we started up like a whole new project as well, and we had 3 trainers, 2 of them burned out in the first month.
Oh,
So I basically ended up, and then our training director also got transferred. So for a while, I ended up being the sole training
oh
department.
my goodness.
So I was taking care of and trying to make 60 people learn a new software and new skills, which obviously didn't work out.
Yeah.
Um, so, with that being said, even the number 27 or even 20 plus
Yeah.
sounds like impossible for any human to do the children any justice.
It is, and it made me really upset because I felt as though it's hard to focus your attention equally on all of them at that point, and there's always some, the more quiet ones that don't
Yeah,
need as much attention, that don't get the attention that I would love to sit and spend time with.
right,
And I mean, I had certain allotted times for specific groups of kids that I would try my best to kind of follow, just so that I could, you know, make a connection with all of them. But at the end of the day, I can be sitting with somebody planning a whole, session or whatever with them, and then something can happen over there. Somebody has an accident, somebody,
right.
falls and hurts themselves, whatever. It's just a whirlwind. I felt like a tornado all the time, just kinda whirling around the classroom. So, yeah, but like I said, it's something that I've always felt very passionately about. I absolutely love kids. I think that they're the most interesting people to talk to when you give them a chance to speak for themselves.
Yeah.
It's incredible what you learn when you sit and you listen to a child.
Well, it doesn't really have anything to do, or not at all, or not completely, rather, with the education system. But when you just said that, just something else came to my mind because I totally agree. And I feel like that's something. that I personally try to preserve in my life, and I always try to remind myself of the way I have been as a child, as
Mhm.
in curious, as in open, as in non-biased
Yep.
towards anyone and anything,
Yep.
and um, not and maybe not even the education system is at fault here, but just I feel like society in general just does something so that when we arrive at the adult age and we basically have lived through 18 through 21 whatever years of being on this earth, we just naturally, and again, I'm not faulting anyone specifically here,
Mhm.
but naturally, like we all just have our baggage. We all just have
Yeah.
our things.
World weighs you down. Yeah.
We do have biases just because
Yeah.
of the experience we lived through, and it's really hard to get back into. And I feel like that's something we should strive for
I
because
agree.
obviously we accumulate knowledge, therefore not being a child anymore, but keeping those things that the child
Yeah.
had, like, yeah, for me, the biggest one is curiosity, openness, non-bias, stuff like that. Just trying to preserve that childlike being
Yeah.
is just so important.
It is. It's incredibly important. And that's one of the things that I learned the most during my time with them is I never felt the kind of excitement and playfulness. You don't get that when you hang out with adults all day. I got
Yeah.
to hang out with kids and I got to be playful and be excited and be curious with them.
Right.
And that was so special. It's such a special feeling when you get to experience that with a child who you can just tell that they're so immersed in whatever experience it
Mm,
is that you're in, and to see it through their eyes, it is just the best thing ever. It really is. Getting to hang out and play with your friends all day. That's I mean,
yeah.
aside from the stressful part, when it came down to it, they were the best thing for my mental health for sure.
And again, just thinking about the counter argument here, obviously, it is um, obviously easier for children to be in a state like that because they don't have to worry about paying rent. They
Yes.
don't
Yeah.
have all these things that it would be very naive and idealistic to just
Yeah.
say we can do without because they are just part of our life. They
Yeah.
are part of the civilization and system we live in nowadays.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like neglect that in any
Mhm.
sense, but um, I still feel like we can do all these things and worry about them in a healthy amount as to like take care of ourselves,
Yeah.
but still keep that playful.
I think when it's done intentionally, that's when it kinda works out. So you've got, you know, an hour after supper with I used to live with my sister, and her and I, we giggle 24/7 when we're together. And in those moments, it's like this is a moment where I'm taking a mental picture in my head of the fact that we giggle and laugh at everything. That's such if that's not playful, I don't know what is, right?
Right.
So it's just those little moments and recognizing those moments and realizing them when they're happening. Um, I think that's what's important when it comes to realizing that, you know, not everything in life has to be taken so seriously and that you can, like you said, and you can pursue whatever little hobby you want. I just got a bunch of coloring pencils and a sketchbook, and I started sketching for some reason once I got here.
Nice.
So I'm like, yeah, I love to color. Why wouldn't I color? Why would I
Yeah,
wait till I'm around, kids to do that? I can do that on my own.
definitely.
Little things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. And just, yeah, just being in that mindset of doing a hobby is something
Yes.
good and not saying no, I need to be more productive, more efficient,
Mhm.
which people love to. And with that being said, obviously, I also love to be productive in a specific way because I have a hobby where I need to do. a lot of editing. I need to like
Yeah.
publish a lot of stuff, and that is one of the topics in my life, trying
Yeah.
to be more efficient and productive. But I think a good word is balance.
Yes. Yeah,
Trying to
absolutely.
find that balance.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Um, but yeah, so another thing that you did, which I believe is also very important in life, is getting out of one's comfort zone, which it sounds like you really did by coming here.
I did. I, uh, lived in a very small town. I grew up with the same group of people throughout my whole life. Um, Moving away for school was incredibly difficult for me. Very, very difficult being away from my parents. My family's
Mm,
very close with my grandparents. I lived with my parents for 2 months before coming to New Zealand just to kinda save
mm,
up a bit of money,
right.
but it was very, very difficult. I think it was just as hard for them seeing me move
Mm,
away, um, but it was I knew I needed to leave my little comfort nest that I had built because, I mean, you don't grow when you're not in a situation that you're uncomfortable in. Like, you when you're not putting yourself out there, you're not, moving forward with your life. That's kinda how I
yeah.
was feeling. I wasn't moving forward in any way. Uh, I really wanted to live a life that, my little sister could be proud of. And the life that I was living, I was, going to work, but I was very sad about work, and I felt very, very stuck. So I'd go home and not I wouldn't talk to my friends. I wouldn't
Yeah.
go out to see people. I would just sit and read. Literally, that's all I would do. And I was like, this isn't a life that, my sister would be proud of me for, or my parents. Like, I wanted to live a life that the people that I loved would be proud of me for living because I value their their opinion of me so much. I hold them all in such high value. Yeah, I decided to do the scariest thing in the world for me, which was move literally the furthest country away. I called my mom over Christmas. I'm like, "Why did you let me do the most dramatic thing possible? Why couldn't I have just moved, like, to the next town over?"
Just go to the States to
Yeah,
start.
had to go to the furthest country possible.
So is that actually the first, I mean, it's super long. It's a year, I suppose.
Mhm.
I don't know about your exact plans, but
I don't know about my exact plans either.
is it the first at all solo travel that you did in your life?
Mhm. Yep, first ever, which is, at 27 years old, you feel pretty silly not knowing certain things that you should know, you know? Like, finding a job here, for example, being from a small town, it was all about connections.
Right.
So, the job I got at the school was my you know, the my old teacher, so I knew everybody there. I didn't have to send in a resume and,
Mm,
do an interview for it. A golf course job that I had, the my boss was my sister's hockey coach, so it wasn't like
mm,
a I knew these people already. My dad was my boss at one point, like, it was always
right.
somebody that you knew. But coming here and doing the process of like, okay, I need to update my resume. I need to send it out in like a concise, do the
Yeah.
cover letter thing and then do the interviews when need be. Like, it was very different than what I was used to, which I am such a creature of habit. So it was a lot. It was really I was thankful that I moved away because I'm like, okay, I'm at 27 years old. This is absolutely something that I should be getting used to and knowing how to do this. So
Well, but then again, we talked about this. It's everyone's own pace,
you're
and
right. You're right.
there are there are so many things that we already discussed today that probably a lot of people hadn't realized before this conversation. And in your field, you know so much, and
Yeah, that's true.
then in other things, you and I and we just don't. So
So completely clueless. Yeah.
everyone has their own pace in that sense.
That's so true.
Um, I kind of forgot my train of thought here for a second. Um, what did we talk about? Getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, moving to New Zealand, solo travel.
I feel like I had a great point too. Um, Solo travel. Well, it might come back. But yeah, I feel like solo travel in general is, in my opinion, I'm very passionate about it. But then again, everyone has their own kind of things that they're passionate about. So that's also something I learned because when I was 17, 18, 19, I was just of the impression that I am right. I know that traveling is the perfect way for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm like, why doesn't everyone do it? Why do
Yeah.
all my friends want to stay in this town? Um, and now I obviously realize that everyone has different dreams. And so for me, it was just something I was always passionate about. And one thing that I do think that travel can add to everyone's life, though, is that it definitely um, makes you kind of um, it makes you be alone in a way, not necessarily lonely, but maybe also, but it makes you really have to figure out how you can be okay with
With
yourself.
yourself. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. That has been, yeah, that's been something I thought about a lot on this trip actually. Um, I was in before coming to Queenstown, I was in Alexandra and I was supposed to be picking cherries and they had laid us off after like 3 days of work
Oh
just because
wow.
it wasn't like the harvest wasn't good. It was
Mm,
raining a lot. They just weren't they couldn't afford to keep as many people on. And so I was in this little, I called it my cell because that's what it looked like. It was like
mm,
concrete room with a bed in it.
right.
And I spent 2 weeks just like kind of feeling sorry for myself a little bit.
Mm,
And I didn't talk to any person face to face for 2 weeks probably. Like I'd FaceTime my family and stuff, but I
right.
just didn't, I felt so discouraged and I just didn't want to talk to anybody. But it was intense being, because then it's like I had to sit with myself and kinda hype myself up because 'cause I'm like, "Nobody is here to tell you what to do. Nobody's here to, be your cheerleader, like, you have to do this for yourself. There's nobody else that you're performing for here. Like, the if you don't do this, then you're going back home. Like, that's the option.
Right.
You either go back home or you stand up and you do this for yourself because like, who else is gonna do it for you?" So that was one of the first times that I really was like, "Okay, this is a step I'm taking with the intention of, that I want my life to be, around people. I wanna meet new people. I wanna make new friends. I want to, work in an environment that allows me to do that." And I guess I had to sit by myself for 2 weeks to kinda hype myself up to do it, but it's not necessarily lonely, but you really have to learn to be okay with yourself, to sit with yourself and realize like, "All right, these are my strengths. This is where I need work, and how do I use these 2 to, like, get me going?"
Definitely. And yeah, like I said, there is obviously other ways to do that as well, and to
Yes,
do that
absolutely.
at home
I
as
don't I
well.
don't suggest that to anybody.
But but yeah, I can again also only speak from my personal experience, which is that for me as well. I just always found it easy in a comfortable spot where I had my friends, where I had my family to kind of. It's very easy to evade these questions
Mhm.
and still lead a functioning life.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, that was also one of the things I valued about traveling the most. because, like you said, that is, in my opinion, also a very important skill to realize. And again, taking a shot at the education system here, um, realizing
I
that
love it.
no one will figure these things out for you,
Yeah.
and that we are kind of not giving that impression while we're going to school, because while we are, it's the exact opposite. You
Mhm.
have a schedule, like,
Yeah.
okay, today I'm doing English, then I'm doing chemistry, and everything is planned out for you. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're done your 12
Yeah.
years. Ciao.
Yeah. Figure it out now. Sorry.
So,
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
that's a thing where you have to learn it by yourself,
Yeah.
sadly, because it isn't part of the education system. Um, Obviously, your family also has a part in bringing you up, and
Mhm.
basically, that's something. Well, I don't plan to have children anyway, but basically, if I would, that's something where I feel like um, parents can also take a role in really showing you have to figure out what you want. It might be to some extent good
Mhm.
to get that knowledge about history. It is important. You need to have uh, like basics in math. Physics can help you understand the world better. Like all this is good, but at
Mhm.
the end of the day, you are living your life,
Yep.
and no one is living it for you. So that is something that I feel like is very important to figure out early on, and
I
just
agree.
um, yeah, figuring out first and foremost, who am I, and
Mhm.
then what is it that I want to do about it so that I can live the life I want to, because no one else is going to tell you.
Exactly. I think that has a lot to do with building up confidence in children, like self-confidence.
Yeah.
I think is one of the biggest parts of, having them be sure enough of themselves to realize that I can figure this out and I can do this. Um, which again, thank you education system. But sometimes it's hard for kids when you've got, somebody who's not good at math and science, and a lot of the times math and science are valued as, if you're not good in those, then you're dumb, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's hard for kids who don't excel in those types of fields to have that self-confidence a lot of the times. So I think, yeah, I think it's just important to when you're reminded at a young age that actually no, you're fine and you're doing great and you're gonna do great and you need to believe in yourself, then you grow up to kind of realize that, oh wait, yeah, I actually can.
Yeah. So um, I actually remembered my point from earlier that basically it takes us into a whole nother
Whole other subject. I love it. Let's do it.
yeah. So because what I was thinking as well, other than you basically doing things at your own pace, and not you, but everyone.
Mhm.
Um, what I personally also believe is that everything does happen for a reason. So that's
Mhm.
something, um, a spiritual belief that I hold very dearly, and that's how I basically um, find meaning in my life. So basically, I want to ask you the same question. Is there any spiritual, religious, or maybe just philosophical belief that helps you or guides you through how you live your life?
That's a really good question. Um, I well, I haven't put much thought into it as much. I do completely agree that everything happens for a reason. I think that yeah, I think that in order to process, like you said, everybody has baggage, everybody has the things that they've been through, and I think that it's easier to process everything when you do have the mindset of this is meant to take place. There's a reason for this. I don't know what it is yet, but
Yeah.
it's necessary. And then later down the line, there's always situations that you go through where in the moment you're like, why me? Why is this happening? And then later on you're like, wow, that was a life lesson and a half. Um I I grew up Catholic, and my grandparents are very very religious. I have very religious
Mm,
grandparents. Um, and my family kinda moved away from the organized religion, and I think that I'm just very I haven't figured out that whole aspect of my life yet. That's pending at the moment.
yeah, and b by all means, I'm not trying to, convince anyone of, what I believe in.
Yeah.
I just also have no problem sharing it at
Yeah,
all, so, um, but as you said as well, I just find it being very helpful in just a practical sort of sense,
yeah,
even if people don't subscribe to the spiritual element of it. I feel like it just puts yourself in more power as well, seeing it as
absolutely.
these things are happening. What can I learn from them rather
Yes.
than thinking it is arbitrary? Because then at the end, if everything happens without a reason, what kind of power do I have to change things?
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like in a practical sense, it also helps people just find, yeah, empower themselves more in the
Yeah.
lives that they're living.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
Um, so you said you don't really know your exact plan yet, but you arrived in September,
Mhm.
so you still have more than half a year
Yeah.
to explore this, in my opinion, beautiful country.
Gorgeous country, yes.
So I suppose you have only been on the South Island
Yeah.
since that's where your
Yeah.
friends live as well.
Yeah.
So, any plans at all on what you want to see here in New Zealand?
I have one thing that I'm open to seeing and doing anything, but there's one thing, and I'm waiting for my family to come visit me to do it
Mm,
because me and my sister love talking about it. I need to go see the Hobbit holes. I
right.
have to. I have a Hobbit hole tattoo on my
Oh,
arm. My sister and I have matching tattoos, and when they come in April, we're definitely gonna go see those. That's what I'm most excited about for sure. Yeah.
nice. You're gonna love it.
Yeah?
I've been there.
Have you?
It's very neat.
Can you
Yeah,
go inside
in a select few.
in
Like
a select
there's
view?
two. Well, there's actually two that they did say are the exact same
Yeah.
because you can only go in one of the two because they divide the group
Oh,
and
okay.
you basically go through one of the two, but they say they are very similar and you don't miss out on anything.
Because they didn't always let people inside, did they?
No, it's relatively new. Like
Yeah.
when I was there, which yeah, it must have been like a year ago now,
Yeah.
because it was in the beginning when I arrived in Auckland. Because I also made my way down to the South Island relatively quickly. Um, so they said, I don't know what exactly they said, but they said they just built it. Like,
Yeah.
it was relatively new at that point,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was everything's so tiny, and
Mhm.
that
Ugh,
was
I'm so excited to go see. I just recently read the first Lord of the Rings book. I've
mm,
watched the movies 10 times over, but I just recently read the first one, and it was incredible, so I'm excited to go see the Hobbit holes.
yeah. I actually never read the books.
No?
My mom has the books at home, and she also has them at home in English because like she loves to read in English. That's why I, from an early age, started to read in English.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I just like it way better than my native tongue.
Oh, really?
I feel like stories told in English are more embellished in a way because the German language is, I mean, it is the language of poets, it is to be said, but
Mm,
it's also a language of science, and it's a very efficient language.
yeah.
So, um, maybe it's just my personal preference because I started reading in English, and that's kind of what I'm used to now. But
Okay.
yeah, I just feel like certain things can be, or English has a more picturesque way of explaining
Yeah,
things.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. No, I love to read. I love, 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 love to read. That's all I do in my free time, honestly. Uh, but yeah, I don't read often in French. I find it a bit difficult to follow reading in French. Some of the words are very complicated and hard to understand, so I prefer reading in English too.
The only book I ever read in French was L'étranger by Albert Camus,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
which was a very weird book.
Was it?
Uh, well, I mean, it basically was this nihilistic view of everything. Well, he is basically the exact opposite of what I was just talking about, because his belief is that everything is random, and
Okay, no, I think I know which one you're talking
it's
about.
about
Yeah.
the guy on the beach, and then
Yes,
he
yes,
ends up
yes.
yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So yeah, we actually read that in school in 12th grade in
Nice.
a French course. So that's the one book I ever read in the French
In
language.
French, yeah.
Uh,
I have Les Miserables on
mm,
my list for sure. But that's so far the only French book that I'm really keen to read.
but I do have to say, and I think I've mentioned it on the podcast, that I'm also currently learning Spanish,
Oh wow.
and because I feel like the thing that I, at least subjectively, feel like is the difference between English and German. I feel like Spanish and English, it's a whole different thing again. Because my favorite book that I tell everyone to read is actually a Spanish speaking book. It's from a Colombian guy called Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and it's
Okay.
Cien Años de Soledad, which means 100 Years of Solitude.
Oh, I
And
think I've heard of that.
they just recently turned it into a Netflix series as well, but I haven't
Mhm.
seen the show yet. Um, and I obviously read the book in English
Mhm.
because my Spanish was and still is almost non-existent. Um, but even in reading that book in English, I could tell that this book, and especially this author, just paints pictures in a way I've never read before.
Really?
So that's one of my goals. Hopefully one day my Spanish be good enough so I can read it in
In
Spanish.
Spanish? Oh, that's awesome. So how many languages do you speak?
Um, well, so German and English fluently. I haven't spoken French in a while, so I still understand like 70 to 80%.
Mhm.
And if I take my time, I can respond as well. But um, I feel it's always easier in a language to understand rather
Yes.
than to respond
Yeah.
yourself. So yeah, still understand Spanish, French. Um, I did speak quite a lot of Indonesian while I was in Indonesia, because it's a very simple language to learn.
Is it?
They don't have any grammar. So basically, Indonesian is, I think, also officially considered one of the easiest languages to learn because they don't have any grammar. They don't have, like, literally no grammar. They don't have plurals. If you want to say, like, orang means a human, like, orang utan, like your orangutan in
Yeah.
English. Um, basically means orang utan means man of the forest.
Oh.
So orang, man or person, and if they want to say people, they just say orang orang. They just say the word twice. So
Oh,
that's
wow,
how
that's
that's how
interesting.
their plural works, and they also don't have any tenses. So if they say I go to church either today or I go to church tomorrow, and
Yeah.
that's how you know if it's in the future or not. So
Hmm.
literally no grammar at all, and there is like a order of words that society has kind of decided on. Even if you don't abide by that order of words,
they can
people will
still
still understand you. So
that's so interesting.
so it really is a language that with only learning vocabulary you can get so far.
Wow. Huh. I can't believe that they have no grammar. That's
Yeah.
inconceivable to me. That's so crazy.
It yeah, it makes you think. Yeah, it is super interesting.
Yeah.
That's why I love languages because it tells you a lot about cultures as well, and you can like take a lot from how a language works and kind of see, so that's why their culture works the way it does.
Yes, yeah. I, the school that I worked at was a French school, so I taught the kids how to speak
Right.
French, and it's so interesting because sentence structure in English and French is so different. It's completely reversed. So it's
Yeah.
like, "The brown dog jumped" would be, like, the opposite in
Sure.
French. So it's
Right.
like le chien brun saute. So it's
Yeah.
completely flipped, and yeah, it's so interesting. Languages are fascinating.
And I find it so interesting as well because um every time, and I might have missed a few, but to just fully answer that question, I also speak a little bit of Portuguese because I lived in Portugal for
Oh,
4 years.
wow.
Um,
Wait, so
s-
how many is that? German, English, uh,
German, English, and French. So those are the
French?
ones where I would say I really speak it.
Yeah,
And then Indonesian picked it up easily in that year,
and
but
Portuguese.
and
Uh,
Portuguese like very basic though. Like I can do my day to day, my shopping, a little bit of small talk. I can't
That's still
I can't hold a conversation like this in Portuguese.
that's
Like
still incredibly impressive. 5 having 5 languages, somewhat 5 under your belt is wow.
and Spanish are really now.
Now
Well,
you're keen on learning
I'm going for
Spanish?
Spanish now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the reason I wanted to tell you about Portuguese as well is because I th- I can really see how, because English obviously is the language that we all decided to be our international language,
Yeah.
and I just had these moments when I talk to my French speaking friends, when I speak to my Portuguese, Brazilian, which is the same language, Portuguese speaking French as friends. Um, and we do speak in English because that's the common
Universal,
denominator.
yeah.
Um, I understand them quite well, and they always say my English is so bad. And I just realized that because I know how their language works, for me, it never sounds weird.
Mhm.
Like a silly example is like my French friend always saying, "Do you have the phone number of Lynn?" For
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
and it's just stuff like that, and you don't really perceive it as weird because you know where they're coming from. You know,
Yes. Oh, I know exactly what you
they're
mean.
just translating their
Yeah.
language. So I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean,
But
even
when you're
though,
not familiar with the language, then it's like, "Why are you saying it like that?" But it's
yeah.
yeah, no, I totally get that.
Or in Portuguese, like they, or I think it's the same in Spanish, they say, I have 14 years.
Mhm.
In French, I don't think it's
As
yeah, like you say,
j'ai 14 ans.
j'ai 14 ans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But it's like I am not it's not I have, it's more I
I am.
am. Yeah.
Right. But in Portuguese, it actually means, eu tenho 14 ans. So it really literally means I hold or I have
Oh, wow.
14 years. So that's why they don't say I am, they say I have.
Wow.
So that's also
That's so
something that,
interesting.
yeah, that for me just never sounded weird. But then obviously if you're a native speaker, you might go like, what is
Yeah.
he saying?
Yes. That's
So
so true.
yeah, I just love languages and I
Yeah,
love to
wow.
like see the differences and also the connections. And yeah, so it is kind of funny when you see like people speaking English and you kind of can see where they're coming
Yeah,
from, why
yeah.
they're saying the things they're saying. Um, but yeah, a thing that for me is like something I'll probably never get into, which I have a feeling for some reason, like especially younger people are super interested in Asian languages, like Korean,
Yeah.
like Japanese. And I feel like that's just something where, um, yeah, because you have to learn a new alphabet. That would be so difficult to me.
My older cousin, his name is Kyle, he, studied, uh, Mandarin,
Right.
and he said it's one of the hardest languages he's ever had to learn because certain words can be the same, but if you say it with a different cadence, it
Mm,
means a completely different thing.
wow.
So that kind of like you said, just those little things is like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine, especially as an adult. So I feel like as a child, it's so much easier to
Yeah.
learn a language. And as an adult, um, I've heard many people say that to fully immerse themselves and to fully learn, they have to be completely in wherever the language is so that that's all that they hear and that's all that they can practice. But yeah, he said it was very, very hard to learn, uh, Mandarin.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I feel like maybe at someday I'll be ready, but be- because I mean, I feel like at some point I might have discussed this on the podcast already, so I don't want to draw it out too much. But because I had my uh, dear friend Richard from Singapore on here, we met in Christchurch, and he's like a really good friend of mine. And so he's originally, well, he's a Chinese Singaporean. So we talked about just all the knowledge and stories that we just naturally miss out on just because of language, because
Mhm.
there's so much knowledge and fiction as well
Yeah.
in the Chinese culture, in the Arab
Yes.
culture, in the
Yeah.
well, also Spanish, which the whole Latin American culture, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of. I mean, it's impossible probably to learn all languages in the world, but that's just kind of why I'm so interested in it, just because the more languages you speak, the more you can look into cultures, stories, and
Yes.
myths and knowledges. And
Yeah. I never thought of it like that either. That's so true. Wow.
because, well, I feel like I'm just telling stories at
I
this
love
point,
it. I
but
love it.
but yeah, I had that realization just before coming to New Zealand. Actually,
Yeah.
like I fully had that realization because I was flying from Munich through Doha, which Qatar,
Mhm.
and they make it like super attractive for you to spend time in the country. Because if you have a stopover, um, I think I paid like €100 more to instead of having a stopover of 4 hours, I had a stopover of 3 days.
Oh,
So that
wow.
includes the hotel. So you had like
Wow.
2 nights in a hotel, paid and was €100.
So it's like a mini vacation on your layover.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So um, I also want to be honest here. I was never the biggest fan of the countries in those regions, um, for reasons that maybe are a little bit biased because I've never been there.
Mhm.
So at first, I was kind of like, well, I don't really want to spend time there though. But
Yeah.
then I said, well, you only go into New Zealand once in your life.
Yeah.
It's like so far of a journey. You have that option.
Yeah.
Just yeah, go into Doha and uh just enjoy it. And I didn't like the city too much, because it was very manufactured, and you
Mm.
could tell, basically at all points that it is a very manufactured city where everything works on time, obviously. But
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, it seemed very sterile of a city.
Mm.
Um, I loved the desert.
Really?
Loved going to the desert there and just had like a whole day tour in the desert, like sunset in
Wow.
the desert.
Oh, that would be
That
gorgeous.
was really cool.
Wow.
And well, one thing I did enjoy was I made sure to check out all the museums that they had in
That
Doha,
yeah, that would be
and
my first checklist of
and
things
that
to do.
that's kind of when it hit me because, like I said, didn't know a lot about these countries,
Mhm.
and went into the museum. And I mean, in hindsight, obviously, but then I was in there and I saw these books. I saw these philosophy books in the Arab language, and I was like, yeah, all the things that we talk about, like French literature
Yeah.
and enlightenment, stuff like that, they have their whole own movements.
Yeah.
They have their own thing. And yeah, that's kind of when it hit me, like just going through and also all the art and like their um, just the way they do like art inside of their rugs, like that's a big thing there as
Yeah.
well, like
Yeah.
patterns and
Oh,
rugs and stuff
wow.
like that. And yeah, I was just really like, wow, it is a whole different world.
It's incredible how, uh, small your world feels once you realize how
Yeah,
your world is not the only world, you know? Like, all the things that you know isn't all there is to know. There's so much more to see and
exactly.
to learn. It's beautiful.
And yeah, and that's what I mean. I haven't been to China yet. I
Yeah.
haven't been to Latin America yet. I'm eager to go in
Yeah.
2 or 3 years. But yeah, so
Oh, that's exciting.
there's so much out there to
Yeah,
discover.
there is.
Um, yeah, I feel like we have tortured the people enough. No,
We rambled long enough.
um, I was talking about myself mostly because I feel like at the end there I was just like
No, I love
spitting
it.
stories. Um, but no, we actually talked about interesting and necessary things. I'm very
Yeah.
glad we got to talk about the education system.
Yes, sometimes I go on little rants about the education system every once in a while, so this'll hold me off for a few months now.
Nice. Um, so yeah, Lynn, thank you for doing it. Thank you for taking the
Of
time and
course.
sharing all your experiences and knowledge with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is so cool that you do this. I really appreciate it.
Nice. I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening. And with that, bye everyone.